Welcome back to Core in Commerce. Today's episode is a little different. Instead of bringing on a guest, I want to share my own story with you. This is a space where we explore wellness, personal growth, and entrepreneurship. And I think it's important for you, my listeners, to know the why behind this podcast and more about me as a host. You might be wondering about the name, Core in Commerce. It reflects the idea that success isn't just about ambition or business. It's also about your core, your values, your personal well-being. And yes, there's a little bit of a cheeky nod in there to mindful movement too. Pilates, breath work, and all the rituals that help us feel centered in both body and mind. This podcast is about both, the person within and the business they're building. I want to be transparent about my own journey, both personal and professional. The pressures, the missteps, the pivots, and the lessons that have brought me to where I am today. Because the truth is, none of us have it all figured out, but sharing the real story behind the work we do can hopefully give you insight, inspiration, and maybe a few practical takeaways for your own path. I'm going to take you from early life to my darkest points to how I eventually found my path in wellness, entrepreneurship, and building a life that's aligned with my truth. Let's dive in. I always like to start out by asking my guests what they were like as a child. And for me, I was nothing like what I am today. I was that little girl hiding behind my mom's leg. I remember there was a Christmas carol where I was on stage and literally ran into her lap in the middle of the concert because I was so shy. I was also not an academic. I think contrasted to my sisters who were super bookworms, Harvard and Oxford MBAs respectively. That was very hard for me growing up where I didn't really feel like I found my stride academically. We also moved around a lot as a kid. So I was born in New York City. I lived in Connecticut. I lived in Mississippi. I lived in Denver. That made it kind of even more challenging to also find my thing. In the school play, there was always one girl who always got the leading role. And she was this amazing actor and singer and like child prodigy. And I, for whatever reason, decided that I wanted to audition for the school play. And I came home again after years of being the shy girl. And I said to my mom, I think I'm going to try out for the school play. And my mom was, of course, totally confused. She's like, this is so antithetical to your personality. Where is this coming from? And the play was Hansel and Gretel. And I said to her, someone's got to be Gretel. Why not me? And that was kind of the tipping point moment. I ended up getting the role as Gretel in the play. And that is where I started to come alive. From there, I got into acting. I became president of my 5th grade class. I did speech and debate in high school. I was captain of my mock trial team. I continued with acting. And it was like overnight, I had realized that maybe I was never going to be that traditional academic personality, but I came alive when I was on stage, when I was presenting, when I was talking to people, and through that came out of my shell and realized that my superpower was really going to be my ability to connect with people and to present and share and inspire, and that kind of tipped off some of what would carry on into my later career. Even though I had really found my stride when it came to presenting and acting and being on the stage, I still was struggling a bit academically. And ultimately that reared its head when it came time to apply to colleges. So for me, my greatest dream was to get to Hollywood. I didn't know what I wanted to do there, but I knew that those sparkling lights and that ability to be on stage was my calling. So my dream was to go to USC, the University of Southern California. I spent an entire summer studying there in high school through a summer program. I had my mind made up, bags packed, I'm going to LA. Unfortunately, because I wasn't there academically at the time, that was my first big heartbreak. I got rejected from USC and had to do a total 180 of what I thought I wanted my life to look like. What I would later find is that that kind of rejection would fuel me in my career. And it's funny, if you listen to the Founders podcast about some of the most successful people in the world, I'm talking like Elon Musk level founders, there's one very common thread, which is that they carry a certain chip on their shoulder, something from those formative years that maybe didn't work out, they were rejected, and that's what fuels them today. And I've had almost a series of stepping stones of rejection that carry with me and fuel my hustle. So I actually think in a way it became a gift later on, but we'll get there. I ended up going to Miami University of Ohio, which is the quintessential college campus. If you've ever seen the show Greek, it's based on that school. I joined the top sorority. I did the Greek life thing. I had the best friends who are still my best friends to this day. But again, I was still in that really traditional academic environment and struggling to find my thing. During my undergrad, I had some pretty formative experiences that really opened my eyes to what could be after school. The first one was studying abroad in London. At the time, my sister was living there. And this was my first point of exposure to living in any sort of global world. I was in the suburbs. I had the same friends since childhood. And this was my first point of exposure to like, oh my God, it's a big bad world out there. And I want a bite of it. Second was I interned at SiriusXM Radio. And this was such a cool internship because I was doing digital content for anything happening at the studio. So basically, if someone came in to promote a movie or someone came in to talk about their new album, my job was to write a blog about it. So sit in on the interview and write a blog about it. So at the time, I got to write blogs about Demi Lovato and Charlie Puth and Paul Rudd promoting Ant-Man. And I was just so turned on by this kind of celebrity culture, and it brought back that fuel that I had of, I want to be on stage again and I want to be living in this Hollywood-centric world. So even though I was still maybe struggling in that traditional academic setting, I started to feel those pings again of something that really turned me on and knew that after school, I was going to do whatever it takes to chase getting back to that sort of entertainment bubble. When I graduated college, like many others, it was New York or nowhere. I was determined to move to New York City. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. My dream was to be an NBC page. If you've ever watched the show 30 Rock, that's what the show is about. It's essentially a one-year rotational program where you go through all of the departments at NBC. It's like a crash course in entertainment. And so many people who come out of that program end up in really high-level media roles. It's like this gateway drug to getting your dream career in media. Fun fact, my mom was also an NBC page, and she went on to be a senior-level executive at HBO. So this was just kind of like made in the stars. I knew I wanted to do this. And that was my second dose of real rejection and real heartbreak. When I didn't get the NBC page job, I was in a total spiral because at this point I was mind made up on New York. I knew I wanted to be in media. I thought that was the only job for me. And it was kind of coping with rejection all over again, bringing back those feelings of not getting into USC, questioning everything. But this was a pivotal moment where I learned that rejection is really just redirection. While I was in the depths of my despair about not getting the position for the page job, one of my sorority sisters had recommended that I apply for a role at an agency working for the HBO client. And this was pretty unappealing to me because I was pretty dead set on being at the forefront of Hollywood, at the forefront of entertainment, working on the brand side. But the HBO of it all was exciting to me. Like I said, my mom worked for HBO. So I was like, you know what? If this gets me a little bit of a foot in the door, I could be excited about this opportunity. It ended up being the greatest career decision of my entire life. What I got in 5 years of working for an advertising agency would take a 20-year career on the brand side to replicate. It was the most hands-on, in the foxhole, crash course in marketing. And every day was 10 fires to put out, and you have this sense of community with your colleagues, and everybody's kind of working towards this common goal, and you're doing these happy hours where you're venting about the client, and you're working until midnight, and it was totally only suited for someone in their early 20s. I look back on it, and I'm like, I had a yoga mat under my desk to sleep on. I never would have had the level of exposure without going down that path and going the agency path. So for any young person who's looking to get into marketing, into media, I can't recommend agencies enough because you just live so many lives so quickly. Back in the day, it was the heyday of digital marketing, and the budgets for entertainment and the parties were just insanely over the top. We had a party, I remember, right before Fire Festival where Ja Rule was like on the table pouring tequila down everyone's throats. And then I remember just a couple weeks later, Fire Festival happened and we all had all this content up on our social media and we were like, oh my God, I think we have to take this down now. I think Ja Rule is canceled. I also had the opportunity to work on crazy programs Game of Thrones final season, Big Little Lies. I worked on Euphoria. And what I really loved was working in what's called the tune-in business. So you're creating marketing strategies for the different shows. Was that every time there was a new program coming out, it was like launching a mini business. And I got really addicted to that spirit of entrepreneurship. So I really felt like I was on fire. I was raising my hand for different opportunities. I was in this client-facing role where you get rewarded for getting up in front of the client and pitching your best idea. And it was bringing back some of those early childhood things that I loved of getting in front of people. And I was always jumping at the chance to present because that falls low on the totem pole for most people of what they want to do. And for me, that was like, oh my God, this is the best day of work ever. I get to present to the CMO of HBO, like cha-ching. A really important life lesson in business, which was showing up is half the battle. Every day I came with my best attitude. I came enthusiastic. I came dressed for the part. And so many doors opened by way of doing that. I remember one time my first year out of university, I went to the Advertising Achievement Hall of Fame Awards, which was really for seasoned career professionals. And it was solely because I was dressed business professional, sitting at my desk while other people were on a smoke break. And the MD of my team came out and he was like, "Oh, Perry, you look ready. Why don't you come with me?" Met a million career executives. It was such insane exposure for that stage in my life. And reflecting on it, I don't think I appreciated it at the time. But the lesson there was really look the part, show up, smile, raise your hand, and doors will open for you. I will also say I'm not condoning this level of burnout culture. I look back on it and there were definitely some toxic elements that I wouldn't endorse at this stage in my career. But I do think that at the time, it felt right. And at the time, I was totally fueled by it. And it really felt like it was the first time in my life that someone needed my brain and needed my expertise and needed me to show up and perform. And for me, that gave me energy and that gave me fuel. So I certainly don't think that that level of output is a fit for everyone and definitely not something that I could have sustained throughout the rest of my career. But I do think that if you're early career and you're young and you're hungry and you have the energy, I highly recommend getting into an environment where you can just roll up your sleeves and get dirty and try a million different things. So from the agency role in New York, I was recruited to work on the team that was building out a marketing strategy for the HBO Max streaming service launch. And this was in the height of the streaming wars, middle of COVID, and this was HBO's first foray into streaming. So this was a huge opportunity. And of course, for me personally, it finally meant that I was getting to Los Angeles. I felt that LA was intoxicating. I was obsessed. I knew I had found my place. I loved driving down Sunset Boulevard and seeing all the billboards of all of the shows coming out. It was just incredible. I worked on the first ever Gen Z cord-cutting marketing service for HBO Max. So that was kind of something that got a lot of attention. And ultimately, I was recruited over to Tinder to help them with their Gen Z marketing strategy. At the time, they were losing younger members and they needed to attract particularly Gen Z female women, which at the time I was in that perfect age bracket. That was kind of my sweet spot in marketing. So I leapt at that opportunity and it did guide me over to the brand side. When I moved over to Tinder, I was still in a traditional media role, but I was really hungry to get into a more creative focused role. But I was going to do everything that I could to move into a brand marketing capacity. So what I did is I aced my day job, made that formulaic, systemic playbook. And I would spend the other half of my day raising my hand for opportunities in brand marketing. And I was really lucky to have incredible mentors at the time who were both senior level marketing executives at Tinder who were excited about my enthusiasm, who responded to it well. And they basically said, hey, we'll pull you into these different meetings so long as you're meeting the needs of your day job and your immediate manager. So that was a huge, huge career defining moment for me where I transitioned from more of a traditional agency lens to being a real brand strategist and creative brain in the marketing world. And ultimately, I was promoted to head of global brand for Tinder. This is where I learned another really key business lesson that I would tell every young person, and it's that you have to ask for the order. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. And if you want something, if you want to make a career pivot, if you want a promotion, if you want a raise, nobody is a mind reader. No one is going to back you. no one is going to be your biggest advocate but yourself. And you need to be the squeakiest wheel who's in there every day saying, I want to move into brand marketing. I want to do creative. I want to move into this department. Every job can be a vessel to where you want to get. You just have to pursue it with that grit and that hustle and screaming it from the rooftops. It's going to seem like you're saying it way too much. But if you think about the capacity that someone has to think about what you have on your plate, it's very de minimis. So you need to be advocating for yourself all the time. And then maybe like that 1% of the time, someone's going to remember what you asked for and make it happen for you. Then the question that I get asked the most, how did I get a job working for Paris Hilton? She had just launched a media company, and their goal was really to be almost like a Hello Sunshine. They wanted to create this media flywheel that connected content, community, and culture. And my background was in building marketing strategies for brands that wanted to create a media flywheel. So particularly when HBO Max launched their streaming service, or when Tinder wanted to appeal to new audiences, all of these little moments in my career kind of parlayed perfectly into what they were looking for out of this media company. I became head of brand and vice president of marketing for Paris Hilton's media company, 1111 Media. It was the craziest experience for anyone who has come from corporate. I was working directly out of her house. The little dogs are running around. It was the year that she had her first baby. I'm, sitting at the kitchen counter while yielding phone calls with senior executives at, different corporations. And they're like, what's that pink, fluffy, sparkly, glittery thing in the background there? And I'm like, no worries. Don't bother with that. I had been coming from these environments that were so structured and so big budgets and so much infrastructure in place. And this was the first time that I had to really get scrappy and create my own playbooks and create my own rules. And if I had an idea, it was possible to execute that. There wasn't some big corporate, bureaucratic, red tape reason why it wouldn't work. I could actually declare I wanted to do something and be entrepreneurial within the space of this company. Something else that I learned from Paris directly is the importance of personal brand and making it clear your why and what you stand for. And I remember she would say something all the time, which was, I'm not a dumb blonde. I'm just really good at pretending to be one. And I thought that was just a masterclass in how to create a brand around something and then make it massive. And, she started with a certain brand in her early 20s and then pivoted that into fragrance and other licensing and clothing and digital content. And for me, I was just so excited by that prospect. And I started kind of the wheels turning of like, I want to do this for my own flywheel. And at the time, I didn't really know what that would look like and how that would manifest. But I was so excited by the idea of doing something like that in my own way. And it was kind of my first touch point of maybe I want to do something a bit entrepreneurial. There was a really funny moment working for Paris. We put on her first ever live concert at the Fonda Theater. It was an incredible night, star-studded attendees. And lo and behold, my very first ever feature in TMZ was walking Sia into the venue, and she's on like one of those like wheelie scooters because she had just broken her leg, and I'm in there like ushering her into the building, and I look like her bodyguard. And the next day I see splayed all over TMZ, it's like Sia enters Paris Hilton's concert, and it's just me in the background looking like her like security. And I get all these texts from my friends, and they're like, where are you? What are you doing? Are you now being a security guard for Sia? What's happening? But at the end of the day, not all that glitters is gold. And I think working that closely in Hollywood, I started to realize some of the darker sides. It's not the most authentic industry. And I think I'd spent so long dreaming of getting to Hollywood and so long of this being my goal that I'd glamorized it so much in my brain that when it actually came and I actually operated in this world, I felt kind of empty. And at the same time, people started asking me for things, and my friends started introducing me as the one who works for Paris. And I noticed people started treating me differently. And you would think that would be, exciting. Like I've reached this career pinnacle, but it actually, again, like it just made me feel like a shell of a person, like a vessel that people were using to their own advantage. And I started feeling more and more dissociated from that life and that goal. And it actually kind of contributed to me feeling quite alone. And it led to this kind of sobering moment where you take inventory of your life, right? It's exclusively been working to this goal of being a senior level executive in Hollywood and media, and I've gotten here and I still feel unfulfilled. What gives? At the same time, I was recently engaged when I started working for Paris. Like many people feel in their late 20s, early 30s, if you've been with someone for long enough, there's kind of the societal pressure that you need to put a ring on it and settle down. And I think we both certainly fell into that trap of we were both career established. I was in media, he was in investment banking. All of our friends around us were doing it. And I think we both kind of felt this, well, there's no major reason why not. So why not do it? And I think for me, particularly as a woman, there was this underlying pressure of what's wrong with you if you're single at a certain age or childless at a certain age. And these are all things that I didn't really process or that didn't really come to the forefront of my brain at the time. But since I've realized that there's a lot of external noise that comes into your brain at that age that you can't fault yourself for making some of these decisions at that time because there's a lot of external influence that you don't even know is happening because it's subtle. And it could be from one-off conversation at a Christmas party with, a random relative where you realize that all of these little bits kind of add up to a certain amount of pressure on yourself to perform in certain places and act a certain way and have your life be at a certain stage. The year that we spent wedding planning was really tough. Nothing went right. Nothing was easy. There was a lot of family drama, and the pressures of my job actually allowed me to kind of escape this. It became kind of an oasis to disassociate, compartmentalize, and just say, okay, that's on a shelf. I'm just going to throw myself into work, which is a recipe for burnout, by the way. 10 out of 10, do not recommend. I remember thinking that once the wedding was over, everything would make sense again. Everything would be fine. And it was just this milestone that I needed to hit to be happy. So I poured myself into the wedding planning halfway through that year and made everything like perfect. Every fine detail I wanted to pour over. I wanted it to be the best event that anyone would ever attend because then I would be happy. Then it would all make sense. Throughout this year, when I was really having this kind of imposter syndrome and this identity crisis, everyone else just seemed so happy for me. It was the first time that I was getting these congratulations left and right. Everyone was like, oh my God, your job is so insane. Oh my God, you're getting married. And it kind of starts to add on and get to you where you're like, oh my God, if everyone's saying it, like I should be happier. I should be so grateful for this. Like if everyone's saying it, like none of my feelings are valid. I'm totally insane. I just need to stay on this track and keep the train moving. External feedback and this external validation and the societal pressures and the fact that I was really just in a stage of complete burnout, both career-wise and personally, that I felt this sort of duty to perform. And I think a lot of people can relate to that is sometimes you get so far down a track that you just feel this pressure and this duty to perform and you don't know which tap to turn off first. I was interviewing for chief marketing officer level roles, which was my career dream. I was 2 months away from my wedding, which was my little girl dream. And my life was picture perfect on paper. I had friends coming to me for relationship advice, friends coming to me for career advice. It was like I had it all made in spade. I felt like I was on autopilot, and I now kind of describe that time as an out-of-body experience. The timing of this episode is not a total coincidence. It's actually 2 years to the day that I got married and a year that I finalized my divorce. It's one of the most positive experiences of my life at the end of the day, but it was very painful for a lot of people around me. And so I have to acknowledge that, even my parents, they're still kind of grieving the life they thought I would have. And while I've worked through a lot of that, I think it's harder, it's generational, and there are some things that take a little bit longer to heal. But to go back to my wedding, it was right around the holidays. I'd ended work for the year. I went down to Jupiter Island, Florida, which is beautiful. For the Aussie listeners, this is where all the golfers live. It was picture perfect. Everything was planned to a T. The universe has a very crazy way of warning you that something is not right for you. I'm going to walk you through some of the things that happened the week of my wedding. First, the weather tried to warn me. This is historically a beautiful time of year. There is not a raindrop in sight. It is all sunshine and blue skies. And there was a categorically historical hurricane-level storm that made us go from plan A to B to C to F of all of the wedding planning. So it was like literally the gods in the sky were telling me, don't do this. Second thing, We get to a day before the wedding, and my fiance had not signed the prenup, which thing for another time, but ladies, prenups are essential. Marriage is the biggest business contract you'll ever enter into your entire life. You absolutely must protect your assets. And if you don't listen to me, listen to Bethany Frankel. She has a whole podcast about this. So we spent the day before my wedding, which should have been this romantic, beautiful, family-fueled occasion, running around trying to find a notary to get that signed, to get that sorted. The next thing, the marriage certificate. I don't know what came over me, but when we were handed the marriage certificate, I turned to my sister and I said, check in with me after the ceremony before you file this to the government. It's not really something a blushing bride would say if they're feeling so in love and so excited about the next steps. The morning of the wedding, my body physically rejected it. I had the craziest physical symptoms. I won't bore you with the nasty details, but the craziest physical symptoms I have ever had in my entire life. I was physically rejecting this, and still I did not listen to my gut, and still I did not take action in that moment. I think ultimately what I felt was this deep regret that the most important decision of my life, I let be guided by external influence and other people when I felt that I was actually a pretty strong and confident person who was capable of making those choices myself. I was just so convinced that once I met these milestones, once I got to the C-suite, once I got married, everything would just fall into place. And when it didn't, I was completely devastated. It felt like a death. And I felt like I was grieving this perfect image that I'd worked so hard to preserve. One thing about me, once I make my mind up, I don't stew. I act fast. So I started cleaning house. I cold quit my job before the new year. I confronted that the relationship wasn't working. I booked a one-way flight to Australia and left 24 hours later. And when I got to Australia, I had a pretty insane moment that I still think to this day could only be explained by, you can't explain it. It can only be explained by, it was the most magical thing that's ever happened to me. So to go back in the time machine, my grandfather, my mom's father, my papa, was basically a second father to me. He lived with us growing up, and he was the most charismatic person you've ever met. His nickname was Steve Stunning because he was so good looking, and he was the funniest. If you talk to anyone, they would say he was their favorite person on planet Earth. He died. He was having scotch and cigars on his patio. He was just that larger than life kind of personality. And when he passed away, he actually said that if he could do life all over again, not have his amazing family and amazing granddaughters, of course, he would have moved to Australia and he would have spent his life in Sydney. And that always resonated to me, maybe in the back of my head, when I was like, where the hell else am I going to go right now? I don't want to be around anyone. My life is completely falling apart. I'll fly to Sydney. I did the Harbour Bridge climb. And I had listened to a podcast recently that said that if you're stuck in life, you don't know where to go, you should climb to the highest physical point you can find for a literal change in perspective. So I was like, okay, sound advice. I'm going to take that advice. I'm going to climb to the literal highest point I can find and try to find some perspective. So I'm standing on the top of the Sydney Harbour Bridge, and this crazy thing comes over me, like a full body ghost inhibits my body. I have full body chills, and I'm looking around, looking in Sydney, and it is the only way I can describe it is my grandfather came to me in that moment and said, this is where you meant to be. There is a life for you here. I am not a woo-woo person. I think you guys have kind of gauged I'm a pretty practical person. I genuinely believe he came to me in that moment and was like, this is what's next for you. So I got to the bottom of the Opera House. I went to the hotel bar. I got a fat glass of Sauvignon Blanc, and I applied to business school in Sydney. Can't explain it. It was the most irrational thing I've ever done, but I just felt like there was something for me here. When I got back, I made the dreaded phone calls, each one pit in my stomach, feeling like I needed to throw up, but I knew that I had to make them to everyone who attended my wedding. And lo and behold, every single call, the response was, thank God, finally got our girl back. Oh my God, there's a light in your eyes again. And it was like all of these people who I thought were exclusively happy for me because I was getting married or because I had this big career were actually in the background super worried about me, had noticed that I wasn't myself. I also that year froze my eggs, which was a really painful process. I'm happy to talk about that on a different podcast. But ultimately, I got more eggs than they thought I would. I was able to do it in a one and done session. And it was the first time in that experience where I really felt like I was starting to reclaim my power. Like the universe was rewarding me for my bravery. 6 months later, I moved to Sydney. My goal was really to discover my why and rebuild. And for the first time, maybe because I blew it all up, I had this blind courage and this belief that everything was going to work out. In business school, I got back to that little girl who had that twinkle in her eye, who wanted to be on stage, who wanted to be a team captain, who wanted to perform. I became president of my MBA program, and it just brought that spark back. I had classmates from over 20 countries, and it opened my eyes to living in this global world again. Like, oh my God, there's this big, fat world out here, and you can take a bite of it. I put my mental and physical health above everything else for the very first time in my life. I fell really deep into wellness practices that had been there for me in some of those darker times, particularly Pilates. And finally, my brain was remembering that I am this badass. I'm not the sheepish girl who makes decisions based on what others want or what the life they expect of me. I am in control of my own life. And it allowed me to start thinking about a transition into entrepreneurship and maybe bringing in some of this newfound passion for wellness. How could I help other people avoid this burnout and live with ambition, balanced with well-being? And I realized all those years in big corporate marketing, they didn't have to be wasted. I could combine my personal passion with all of these professional skills that I've built over time. That's where we are today. I have this amazing podcast where I get to talk to other people about their own journeys and their own experience of finding their why. And I have this epic community of Pilates lovers in Sydney who genuinely connect with each other through thoughtfully curated content and events. And it's just so inspiring to see that these girls also have this passion for connection and wanting to feel a little bit less alone in the world. So I'm going to leave you guys with a little bit of advice to sum this all up because I feel like the cat who's lived 9 lives. If you're someone who feels behind, this is what I would tell you. The only opinion or timeline that matters is the one in your gut. Life is not a dress rehearsal. Live it truthfully to yourself or you will suffer every single day. Opportunity knocks softly. Listen, be open-minded, and take the risk. And the biggest one, you can start over again and again and again and again. And if it gets really bad, you can move to the other side of the world and find an entirely new version of yourself. If you feel like there's an unimaginably brave, hairy decision that you've been putting off because of fear of what will happen, there is no such thing as a sunk cost of time in your own life. The best day to make a change is the day that you're ready. A wedding is just a party. Don't give it more weight than that. Focus on the relationship first. You will fall in love again. This time it'll be better because you took time to love yourself. You will find another job, a job that fuels you because you did the work to attract the right kind of opportunity. Nothing is embarrassing, and people forget about you in about 30 seconds. And you get 2 choices in life. You can sit in the arena or you can play in the stands. And it is a hell of a lot more fun to be in the game. I'm going to give you 3 hot takes to live by, 3 personal and 3 professional. 3 personal. Number 1, stage over age. As you get older, the people who are going to fill your cup are going to be the people who are at the same stage as you. I have friends in their 50s, I have friends in their 20s, but the day that you stop giving any sort of merit to age is the day that you form more genuine friendships. Number 2, you like it, I love it. True friendship is about energy matching. Who you call with bad news, but the most important, who do you call with good news? Number 3, treat your social media following like your little board of directors. These are the voices and the influences that, believe it or not, are shaping your entire sphere of influence. Unfollow anyone who triggers you, anyone who doesn't inspire you, or anyone who overwhelms you with their goddamn success. Follow those people who fill your cup. I promise that makeout from middle school will still be there if you want to refollow him in the future, but it is not a necessity today. 3 professional hot takes to live by. Receiving feedback is a gift. Delivering feedback is an art. The best way to deliver feedback is by presenting it as a situation, a behavior, and an impact. What was the situation in which this happened? Be ultra specific. What was the behavior that this person exhibited? And what was the impact of that on the team? Number 2, this is for my Aussie listeners, be the tall poppy. There is no reward in this life for a silent founder. You have to be preaching your mission from every angle. You have to embrace the cringe. You have to embrace putting yourself out there and creating a personal brand. Number 3 is the networking rule of 3. Every time you have any sort of networking chat, meet a new person, ask them at the end of the conversation to introduce you to 3 more people who they think you would get on with. It could be because you both share an interest in Pilates. It could be because you both work in marketing. Whatever those things are, ask them to introduce you to 3 more. And in the course of one 1-hour coffee, you've 3x your network. I'm going to bring us home with a little bit of reflection on where I'm currently focused and what you can expect from this podcast going forward and some of my other platforms. So I really think what today's episode was about is about building a life that's aligned with your truth. I am so excited for 2026 and all of the upcoming projects that I have in the Pilates space, in marketing, in media. I wish I could clone myself 10 times over to execute on all of the ideas that I have, but it is the best place to be where you feel like so excited about everything that's happening that you wish you could just have more of you. And that's how I feel. I feel like I took the time to go through the depths of digging deep and making the big, hairy, scary decisions. And now I'm reaping those rewards of living in my truth and living in abundance. And good things are just coming by way of being so freaking disgustingly authentically myself now. I'm going to leave you with this. And this is something that my mom has told me my entire life. And I hope it resonates with you. Everybody has stuff. Everybody has a bag of baggage that they carry around, whether or not they lead with it or don't. Everybody has stuff, and your stuff is no heavier than the person next to you. And I would give you advice that honesty is the most disarming thing in this life. And if you meet someone with a little bit of candor and a little bit of honesty, it is very disarming. And I promise you, they will meet you back with the same. So my challenge to you guys is do something today that scares the shit out of you. Have a big, scary conversation. Do the thing that's been moving from the bottom of your to-do list week over week over week. Your future self has got you. And me too. I'm literally right here. I've got you.